Hello and welcome back to this episode of SoulShift. Today, Ali and I are joined by Sadia Hameed, a spiritual guide and transformational mentor who helps conscious women reclaim their power and reconnect with their inner light. Sadia works with leaders, entrepreneurs, and mothers who are building beautiful lives and legacies, yet often find themselves exhausted beneath the surface of their success. What we love about Sadia's work is her commitment to wholeness, helping women thrive not as fragmented roles, but as integrated, sovereign beings flourishing across every area of life. This is truly the essence of what we hope to inspire during every episode of SoulShift.
Welcome to SoulShift, where modern science, ancient wisdom, and real life come alive.
SoulShift is your weekly dose of inspiration and a reminder that meaningful change can be both gentle and powerful.
Together, we'll unlock practical tools, share conversations that spark something beautiful, and celebrate every facet of your incredible human experience.
Your energy matters, your growth matters, and you matter. Let's shift boldly,
joyfully,
together.
Welcome, Sadia. We're so grateful to have you here.
Thank you, Mindy and Ali. It's my pleasure to be here.
So let's dive right in. You work with women who from the outside appear to be thriving, successful careers, beautiful families, meaningful work, yet many of them come to you feeling burnt out and fragmented. What do you see happening beneath the surface and between the lines for these women?
Yes, so many of the women that I support and work with have everything that we've been taught that we're looking for, right? On paper and on the outside, they have successful careers, or many of them are raising beautiful families, or they're doing both. And there is this sense that they have reached a certain place and accomplishment, but there's something inside them that's just really, really tired. And the reason why I see this happen, it was my personal experience as well, is that as women, we're really trying to perform in standards that were honestly not designed for us to succeed in. They're very masculine systems and structures, and they're not based on the rhythm, the flow that a lot of women experience. And so when you're trying to perform in those systems and structures, you can make it so far, and then you hit a point where your body and even your spirit just sort of gives out a little bit. And you start feeling this desperate feeling inside where it feels exhausting and it feels heavy. And you're wondering why it's not fun anymore and why you're not lit up anymore. A lot of women come to me at that point and they have this question of, is this really as good as it gets? Is this how I'm meant to be feeling? And the truth of that answer is no, but it's also not anyone's fault that they end up feeling that way.
I find it very interesting and relate also to what you say about women performing at a certain level because basically this is who they were told they needed to be. Where do those messages come from?
Those are wired in the earliest years. So when we talk about our nervous system or just a code of behavior and beliefs that we have that are not just in our mind, they're actually embedded in the cellular memory of our body. And we gain those. Now, researchers say in the first 3 years of life. It used to be believed that it was in the first 5 years of life, which is just around the time when you start really consciously remembering your life. Now, apparently, it could be even earlier. Most of us don't remember 0 to 3 very well, but this is the moment where we're absorbing absolutely everything in our environment. And our caregivers, our community, and our surroundings are setting the tone. So we become like a sponge. Also, at this age, we're not independent and sovereign. We are, in fact, physically dependent on other people to meet our needs. So we start learning certain behaviors of what do we need to do in order to have those needs met. And that begins to bring into our cellular system this belief also that those needs are almost always met outside of ourselves, which is true when we're little, but that changes when we become adults. However, when we start coming of age into adulthood, No one taps us on the shoulder or takes us into a classroom and says, hey, now it's time to reprogram this and give you sovereignty and free will and help you reconnect back into the truth of your power and your core so that you can start behaving, believing, acting from this place instead of whatever it might be that you grew up conditioned to believe. And if you follow quantum energetics, we carry, especially as women, but men do as well, DNA that goes all the way through our ancestry, which means that for some people, if they had certain experiences in the womb, during conception, or even they can bring their ancestors' experiences through them through the cellular body. And so it makes working on our nervous system and actually learning how to heal the light body very, very important. And it's something that seems to happen when we've already gone through decades of trying to make it on that old programming. And then all of a sudden it's like, is this really how it's meant to be? And then you're spending more time trying to find your way back to what feels better.
Yeah. So then to fast forward that, the burnout isn't connected to just doing too much. It's deeply connected to our nervous system programming.
Absolutely. Yes. So burnout, when you experience burnout, and I call it the hustle burnout loop, because people won't always just burn out once. They will burn out multiple times over the course of their life. They might hit burnout sometime in high school, then again in their career, then again when they're having a family, then again later on in life. And so we don't always just burn out once. We actually have a survival program that allows us to burn out and then rekindle and then do it all over again. But burnout is deeply connected to our nervous system. And when we start experiencing that feeling of burnout, it is our body's way of starting to signal to us that something needs to shift and to change. And oftentimes I say that burnout is actually when the soul is finally able to start speaking through the programming of the nervous system to say, we can't keep doing that. So when we're young, we're programmed to survive. And as we grow up and become adults, that survival program is still running. Now, sometimes burnout can actually start taking you to the place where the survival program is in danger because you're exhausted, you're fatigued. People might manifest really terrible illnesses. There might be something else that happens. And so you hit this almost tipping point where now the program isn't sure that the hustle is safe anymore. And so it starts to send an alert. But we're not always paying attention because we don't always know what that feels like. And when we do figure that out, that something doesn't feel right, often there's very little guidance on how we actually start to recalibrate and come back to a state of regulation.
Yeah. And that brings me to many of the women that I work with who have spent years disconnecting from their bodies, right? Pushing through, overriding signals, numbing out. So how can we help these women begin to read what their bodies are actually telling them?
The truth is, I spent most of my life completely disembodied. I was fighting against myself for at least the first 3.5 decades of my life. And it's really hard work going against your actual grain to try to measure up to standards that you never co-created for yourself is honestly really exhausting. And the harder we push, the more effort it takes to be able to move us in that direction. And we do disembody. We start to either numb out or we start to just try to stay busy because being back in the body doesn't feel safe and it doesn't feel complete. And this goes back to that survival programming I also talked about from 0 to 3, where our needs were being met by somebody else. And so in adulthood, we're still searching for that. But the safety, the validation, the belonging, the love, the trust that we're trying to actually find, that is deeply rooted within ourselves and within our core. And so nervous system healing and healing from burnout is the process of actually coming back home to yourself. And once you find an anchor into that really deep sense of safety in your core, then you start to rebuild trust with yourself. And then the external conditions and circumstances can shift and change. But what remains really steady is your sense of certainty and your sense of self. And that is a really important journey that a lot of women can take. because I never felt safe anywhere in my life until I learned how to feel safe in me. And not safe in my body as in there's never any danger around me, safe in a sense of trust, certainty, and steadiness of knowing I've got this. I don't know how, but I got this. I've got me. And that changes your whole state of being once you're able to come back into that way of being.
Yeah, I really want to dive into this whole concept of safety. Just you talk about nervous system programming, but is what you really mean, or am I not understanding it to be nervous system reprogramming?
Well, we could see it either way. I would say that when we came into being, when we first took our breath of life, we had a programming that didn't have all of the influence and the noise and the fog that we find ourselves moving through as we go day by day, month by month, year by year. So whether it's about returning to the original program or whether it's about reprogramming, I would encourage listeners not to worry so much about that, but to take the message that they have the ability to come back into a really wonderful state of balance and knowingness that does not exist outside of them, that actually they have all those answers within them. And there's a really gentle process that you can start going through in order to calm the noise and allow the body to come back into that state of being. And it might also be helpful to just explain a little bit about the nervous system itself. The nervous system is like an electrical communication system that is running through our body. And what it's doing is it becomes the interface between our physical body, our environment, and our mind. So when we're little, if we take the example of touching something that's hot, right? You will touch something that's hot and it hurts. Your body senses the pain and your mind registers that that is painful and therefore probably is not a great idea to do it. And that communication mechanism that's running through your body that sends the alert and allows us to feel all these emotions we feel and to use our senses is where the nervous system really starts to play in. Part of what ends up happening as we move through our life is that we lose a little bit of the connection of how that system is also including things like our intuition, our core wisdom, our knowingness. And so sometimes people will say something like, oh, I had a gut feeling. That's also running through our nervous system. So in essence, it's this beautiful energetic mechanism that is allowing us to gauge our environment, determine whether it's safe or not. It programs our mind into what those experiences actually feel like so that we can remember them. Everything is based off of that memory. And then our intuition, when our nervous system is regulated, our intuition is able to play in. And that's when you have all these ideas, these moments that you act on without necessarily having to overthink it. And so it's just this really beautiful system. Unfortunately, most of us have never fully experienced what it's like when that is in its most aligned, calm, and natural state. Because from a very early age, we ended up going into the survival program, and the nervous system, when it stays in that place, actually creates a physical experience, and the brain is recording all of those experiences, and then we just loop them on repeat in different situations, circumstances, and environments.
So we really need somatic practices, right, to help us realize that we are in safety mode, especially for women who have been in survival mode for years.
Yes, so somatic practices are very, very helpful. And I encourage women to think about these things as holistically as possible, because I think that sometimes it can also feel really overwhelming when you're in the healing and the wellness world. There's so many different practices and so many different modalities. And I know for myself personally, I felt like I had to go to each one separately in order to figure out which one was actually going to help me. And what I've realized is that there's actually a really beautiful union between these. And as your nervous system starts to regulate, you just start automatically doing it. You're not going to need the somatic practice app on your phone after a couple of weeks, because your body is going to regulate. A somatic practice practice is a very natural part of our physiological experience. And it's something that the nervous system starts giving you indications that it needs, so you almost start craving it. So deep breathing, being able to sit with your emotions and keep yourself really calm. Movement, and any kind of movement, doesn't have to be rigorous movement, but movement to allow the flow of energy to move in and out and through you. And I always encourage people to not worry about what that somatic movement is, but to find one that feels most natural and that you can do at any time and that you really want to do. And so it's less about any kind of a doctrine for me and much more about just that sense of, I really feel like going for a walk right now. I really feel like I need to go to the gym right now. I would love to just sit here in absolute silence right now. And other things are also somatic practices. Laughter is a somatic practice. It is a physical release and expression going through our body, but rather than talking about pain and trauma, which is what a lot of somatic practices focus on helping you release, it's the other vibration. It's the vibration of joy. So I encourage people to think about that really holistically. Like, we are actually engaging in somatic practices all the time, all throughout our day, even if we don't realize it.
I just want to clarify, though, for our audience, we're throwing out the word somatic a lot. Basically, somatic practices are practices that involve the body more than the mind. It's becoming embodied, inhabiting our bodies through these various tools. And that's very important in an effort to, and to use your term, anchoring safety.
Absolutely.
It's not about not being surrounded by danger. It's finding that safety within.
Absolutely. So it's being able to go into any kind of movement or even breath state that allows you to be present fully in your body. Because sometimes we can go through our mind and leave our body, and that's how we become disembodied. But somatic practices make you focus on actually being in your body and bringing the experience you most want to have through that real anchoring into your body. And then you start to build that enjoyment of being embodied and realizing that there's a sense of limitlessness that you can achieve through that.
And sometimes it's as easy as starting with a deep breath.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Sadia, for her explanation.
Sadia, I love that you're talking about the transformation tools that we can use. And I know that many women feel like healing and transformation, and it seems very big. It seems very unapproachable. It seems something that's going to take forever. And how can they even begin this? And do they have time to fit it in their day? And I know sometimes women will just feel like, I'm so broken beyond repair. Why even begin? But you mentioned that this can happen kind of quickly. You mentioned that we can start somatic practices, and within a couple of weeks, we no longer need the phone to tell us how to do somatic practices. So can you speak into that a little bit more about how do we approach this and not feel overwhelmed by, we don't know what we don't know yet. So how do we approach this and feel like that we can do this at a pace that works well for us?
I mean, one of the most wonderful things about quantum energetics and healing, which is the modality I work through, is that it happens very quickly. And so I can give an example of myself. I spent probably 35 years in burnout, getting to burnout, multiple burnouts, but about 5 months actually coming into a completely regulated nervous system. So if you compare those two, there's a huge difference. And I'm somebody who was, I've done all the programs. I struggle with my weight. I've, gone to all of the therapy, and there's been a lot of seeking that help and wanting to feel better. And that is the key that I really came to, that I love to talk to women about, is how do you want to feel? Not even thinking about how you want your life to be. How's it going to happen? What are your responsibilities? We start with the first question. How do you want to feel? And when I sat with myself and I asked that question, I thought, yeah, I wanted to feel safe. I wanted to feel nourished. I wanted to feel cherished. I wanted to feel rested. These were deep feelings. When I even say those words, they take me deep into the core of my being, like this truth that is a state of being that I long for and that I believe I deserve. So it starts with small practices. Pick a day, right? Start today and think, how would I really like to feel today? And what are some of the small steps I can take to help myself feel that? So as a solo mom, for example, I used to long for silence. Like all I wanted was quiet time. And often by the time I got it, I was so tired, I would just fall asleep in a heap too. So I started asking myself a question, right? When are the moments when I can actually find that quiet time? Maybe it's not a day-long retreat. Maybe it's not a whole afternoon, but maybe it's 10 or 15 minutes. And where can I find it? And what would I do in those moments of silence? And how do I want to feel in that moment of silence? So I advise women to start with a day, start with a week, and then pay attention to your energy flows. Where are the moments where something happens in your day and you feel really great? Because we tend to remember at the end of the day the things that didn't feel great. And so I ask them to actually flip that. Start paying attention, take out a journal, just make a note, little audio note in your phone. When did you feel great? And can you remember that moment? Because that's what we want to take, and we want to start expanding it out into your day as much as possible. It could have been the smell of a warm cup of coffee wafting across your kitchen. It could have been that moment where you got out of a warm shower and you just felt renewed for the day. It could be the moment that your head hits a pillow and you think, you know what? I get to just be here for myself right now. Like, we're talking about micro moments. They don't have to be big things. These are the things, though, that allow us to really get into that moment where something felt really spacious, nourishing, expansive, wonderful. And then you go from there. You start actually building them out into your day so that you can start feeling better. And when you start feeling better, then you can create the spaciousness to go into some of the deeper work. But when someone's exhausted, if you hit them with transformation and trauma healing and, all of this other, it just feels more tiring. It's like that's another job on top of a job. And it turns a lot of people off. And it did for me for a long time too. When you start feeling better, honestly, by just being really devoted to yourself. So devotion of self is one of the first principles I guide women through in the Trinity of Self. That is just allowing yourself to decide how you want to feel, and then fully embracing that you're so worth it, and capturing those moments when you've given yourself permission to receive it, so that we can actually anchor into what that was and create more of it in lots of different ways. And those small moments start to glimmer through your day, and then your days start to glimmer into your weeks, and you start to feel better so much faster without the caffeine, without all of the extra stuff. And then you chase that feeling because it feels great. It's like the best dopamine hit that you could possibly have. And then we keep expanding from there. The deeper healing work does come, but it comes when you've already allowed yourself to just be really good to yourself for a little while first.
I love the idea of micro moments. One of the things I work with my clients is we don't have to make these dramatic changes in order to feel a whole lot better, right? We can make small changes and feel a lot better. And I love that you can take these micro moments and really expand on how you're feeling and really feel pretty powerful from just a micro moment. And I'm really excited to embrace that in my own daily life as well. So thank you for sharing that, Sadia.
Absolutely. And can I give an example of one of my favorite ones of how you can create this for yourself?
Please. Yes.
Because I remember talking a lot about things like positive affirmations. And one of the things that I have mentioned is that positive affirmations are wonderful once your body feels safe to actually receive them and allow you to take the action to follow through on them. So one of the things that I do every morning now is the moment I wake up, the first words I say to myself is, "Good morning, Sadia. It is my joy and my privilege to love and take care of you." So what do we need today? It takes just a few seconds. It's so powerful. It's not an affirmation. It's a commitment. It's a declaration. It's an action statement, right? You're offering yourself devotion and you're saying, I'm going to show up for myself and I'm going to take a moment to pay attention to what it is that is. And then you can intuitively follow that feeling, whatever that feeling might be, what you want to eat, how you want to move, a couple of minutes you might need to yourself, the frustration you need to release, whatever that might be. But that's what I mean when I talk about devotion and practices. And then you get to live into it. And you might do that for a few days and nothing much changes and nothing much happens. But eventually you are training your system to almost expect that, as it's like, wake up, welcome, right? So you start waking up feeling a little bit more excited because you're going to greet yourself with so much devotion. And then your body starts thinking, oh, that's interesting. And we're still alive. We survived. So what's this new feeling? Let's remember that one. Let's program. This is how the programming starts to either reprogram, as you said, Mindy, or how we discover our original program. And then you move from there. And that's just like, it makes me happy even to share that with you. So the feeling you experience yourself when you're doing that, these are the things that collapse time and collapse the past and collapse trauma and help your body recover at quantum speed. The body is actually incredibly amazing at what it's able to do. You can, in fact, shift very quickly. The main thing is you start knowing you're worthy and safe to do it. And then you start believing you're capable to do it. And then you want to know what you're capable of. And so it becomes this really fun game you play with yourself.
You make this so approachable and it's not intimidating at all. So thank you. It's exciting. Actually, you make it very exciting to think about how we can approach our own bodies. And I'm fascinated, I'm going to switch gears a little bit. I'm fascinated by this concept that you practice called soul codes. And I would love for you to share what soul codes are and how do we access them?
Absolutely. So my understanding is that we all come and we aren't incarnate into this lifetime. And when we come in with a soul and a spirit that comes into this physical body in order to live out this lifetime. And much like you would think of a plant seed, we do actually come coded with a purpose of why we are here and all of the capabilities that would allow us to be that, be on purpose. So if you think about a plant seed, when you plant a plant seed, if you buy an apple seed, for example, or a sunflower seed, you plant the seed's already coded, right? Unless there was a mix-up, you wouldn't plant an apple tree seed and expect it to grow a sunflower. Now, how does that little seed know? It has this amazing coding in it that knows when it's planted into the soil, that it's activated, that it can pull in all the nourishment it needs, adjust its environment in order to have the best success at growing into this beautiful apple tree. And it doesn't spend a lot of time wondering why it wasn't a sunflower plant, right? It's happy to be an apple tree and it goes off and it becomes this beautiful apple tree. We are very much the same. When we came with a full coding of what we're here to do, which is so beautiful because it means that we are each unique. We each have a purpose. We're meant to be here. There's no mistake about why we're here at this particular moment in time. It's because we're necessary, we're essential. And that becomes part of the anchoring into your sovereignty and belonging within yourself. And the soul codes are there in order to help you access through your intuition all of the information, the ideas that you need in order to actually live out that purpose. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't have to learn skills or go to training or do things like that. Like there is action involved in developing the mastery to become your purpose. But a lot of that comes from actually following the joy, following the things that light you up. And it is a lot of what gets conditioned out of us at a pretty young age because we go into systems and structures that are actually conditioning us to come out into the marketplace and to serve a different function. But when you follow the creative passion and that expression, that is what your actual soul blueprint is. And it is so often why women my age or anywhere between their late 30s and their early 50s will talk to me and say, Sadia, there has got to be more to life than this, right? They have this yearning in them, something that wants to be expressed that is not yet fully expressed, but you can't really understand why. And that's all your soul code starting to come online saying, hey, you know what? This has been great, but actually we're here for something so much more. And when you move into that, you start to live in a true sense of abundance, a true sense of co-creation. Because if we're all here and we're limitless and we're unique, that means there is no need to compete against each other. There is no sense that for me to succeed and blossom into the fullness of my being, that someone else needs to suffer a consequence, that there's a consequence to me doing that. It's actually the complete opposite. And so that's how I like to describe it. And if you want, I can go into more detail about how it's actually coded into us and where it lives and how we begin to awaken it.
I think I'd love to learn a little bit more. Please, if you don't mind continuing to share just for a few minutes.
Sure. So we talk a lot in quantum energetics about cellular level healing and just this understanding now, even through research, that our cellular body is where we are holding the memory and the imprint of just about every experience we've had. And it holds the memory of all of our capabilities as well. And so in the spiritual world, there is an understanding that our carbon-based DNA, which is what we talk about and scientists study all the time, is actually just an external casing around the actual soul DNA that we come in with, which is actual crystalline DNA. And that crystalline DNA holds all of the codes that we came with. So if you start thinking of yourself as this really powerful, ancient being, potentially from somewhere far out in the cosmos, right? We're made of stardust, the same that everything, like if you start looking around and you think the same, I am what makes that beautiful tree. I am the essence that runs through the wind. I am the warmth of the sun against my skin. I am that beautiful moon in the night sky. You start realizing that actually everything around us is just magical and mystical and interconnected. And so we tend to feel like our lives here are like this big, but the truth is that they're so expansive. And all of that is living within us. Now, we come here with free will, which means we have the choice. We can either choose to really tap into that and unlock that capability, or we can choose not to. But if we wonder why certain people are able to like become that star athlete, or certain people are able to have that idea that just became a supernova, that's not because they are more capable than us or smarter than us. It has a lot to do with the fact that they've been able to tap into that inner genius that we came with. And they might not do it consciously, but that's exactly what they're doing. They're tapping into that blueprint inside them that has all of the information of how they can actually live their life in order to achieve that state of being. And once they achieve it, then it keeps going from there. You don't necessarily only achieve one thing. You keep expanding, you keep regenerating. But what happens between 0 to 3 years of age is, as the conditioning and the survival programs come online, what we have coded above the actual code gets in the way. And so you could imagine it like walking through a fog your whole life. And then all of a sudden you might have this moment of clarity, or you might be somewhere or hear something and it takes you somewhere and you're not sure why. All of those things are about the remembrance and the glimmers of coming back into that original programming. And when your nervous system is healed, you're able to hear yourself. And the guidance is honestly quite specific. You have a certainty about doing it, even if it's a little bit uncomfortable, because the growth lies on the other side of the comfort. But the certainty of yourself is there. I mean, it's a really, really beautiful feeling. And I 100% believe that every single person already has it within them. And so one of the biggest joys of my life is I get to help people reconnect back into it and start living from it, and watching them feel so much better and come into a state of being that perhaps they didn't even imagine for themselves. And once their soul's codes come online and I can tune into that frequency, I can start to see some of their highest timelines, and oftentimes dreams that they have never said out loud to anybody else. They'll say, Sadia, I've never said that out loud to anybody else, but I'm saying it to you. And I'll say something back to them and they'll be like, how could you know that? Or I can't even imagine that for myself, but something inside of me is lit up right now. And that's how we know that we're going through that process. And it's just really beautiful.
Wow. Your work is really powerful.
It's a privilege to be able to be of service that way. And to have experienced it myself. And the beautiful thing about this is that you realize that we live in a real state of mutual reciprocity. And so the way in which I'm able to expand and experience my own limitlessness is also by serving and supporting other women to find theirs, because we are continuously activating each other. And so that starts to make you understand this idea of the collective and our collective success, our collective joy. It really is essential, because in fact, I can only go so far unless there's someone else that I'm journeying alongside, and then we are unlocking together. And you don't know where it is you're going to end up, but it's a really beautiful journey to find out.
It's fascinating. It's so wonderful. I mean, you've given us and our listeners so many empowering truths, but if you could leave them with just one truth about their true capacity to transform, what would it be?
It would be that the strongest ally and the most beloved person that they are longing for is actually themselves. That no matter who goes or stays, ask yourself, who's always been there? I love asking that question. Hey, tell me, who's always been there? And I'll get examples of other people. And I'm like, okay, but really, who's always been there? I've always been there. Oh, yeah, I've always been there. And here I am. And so it doesn't have to start anywhere outside of you. It gets to start right here. And it is truly the most important friendship, love affair, mentorship experience of your life. And when you tap into it, it's just the most beautiful feeling. And it's something I want everybody to be able to experience. I could never just want it for myself.
Sadia, I love that so much. I relate to it exponentially. I thank you so much. So you've got to tell our listeners where they can connect with you and learn more about your work.
Absolutely. So they can find me through my website. It's livingherlight.com with little dashes in between. So www.living-her-light.com. On Instagram, I'm Sadia_livingherlight. My email is the same, and I'm happy to share all that information. On LinkedIn, I'm just Sadia Hameed. So I would love for people to connect with me. I'd love to hear what resonated. If anyone needs any support, I'm always here. And I'm so excited for their journey. And I know that really beautiful, expansive things await.
Just beautiful. And all of the information you just shared will be in the show notes.
Thank you.
Hyphens and all.
Hyphens and all. I had to stop and think about those for a second.
So we really have to thank you so much, Sadia, for this beautifully rich conversation. You know, the reminder for me, and I hope our listeners, is that our exhaustion is not our fault, and that the wisdom we're seeking lives within us all along, and that we can access our own inner light through the gateway of our bodies.
Yes.
Such empowering and necessary work. So to everyone listening, I hope you feel the permission to slow down, to listen to what your body is telling you, and to remember that you are not broken, you are not alone, you are whole, and you have everything you need within you to come home to yourself.
Absolutely.
That's it for today's episode of Soul Shift. Thank you for being with us, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
Thank you for sharing the sacred time today.
We hope something in this conversation touched your heart
and offered nourishment for your soul's journey.
Remember, transformation is most effortless when it happens one tender shift at a time.
Until next week, we invite you to carry one insight from today into your life.
Not as a task.
Think of it as a superpower to yourself.
If something resonated, we'd love to hear from you. If you're joining us on YouTube, feel free to leave us a comment below.
Your words ripple outward, offering connection and comfort to others walking this path beside you.
If SoulShift feels like home, please subscribe and consider leaving us a review.
Your support will help us reach more hearts that need to hear they're not alone.
We're holding you in love, so know you're not alone. Your journey matters.
May your heart be filled,
and may your path be filled with grace.